can someone please explain to me what is happening with C-dramas these days? So I finished watching Unveil Jade Wind, which is starring Bai Lu and Wang Xingyue. I'm not gonna lie, this drama was disappointing for me. In this video, I have a lot of things to complain about, but don't worry, I'm not going to drop any huge spoilers. I did make a first impression video about the drama, but now I want to talk about everything. Actually, I want to complain about everything. Firstly, I want to talk about how they fail to keep their hidden characters mysterious. I noticed this on episode 9 where you could easily see the faces of the characters who are supposed to be mysterious. But it's not a big deal because it was actually the first time the characters came on screen. As I was watching the drama, I started getting bored of the storyline. The cases were fine, but they just didn't catch my attention anymore. It was too obvious and they were doing the same analysis in almost every case, which became very boring. My issue with the cases is the lack of connection between the cases and the main storyline. As we know, the main storyline is about Li Pei finding the truth behind her family's massacre 15 years ago. So every case must have some clues that leads up to the mastermind behind her family's tragic ending. But it wasn't that way because each case was in a world of its own. The characters barely had anything to do with Li Pei's family. Only Xiao Huajing was directly linked to the case since he was the one who saved her. And he's also helping her with these cases she's busy dealing with. But we'll talk about Xiao Huajing later. For now, I just want to complain about the disappointment I have on how the cases felt like I was watching different dramas. But in reality, it was just one drama. I understand that they might have used those cases to show that Li Pei is capable of investigating cases. But one or two cases is enough. That's why I was fine watching the first two cases because I thought the next cases will start linking to the main storyline. But no, we had independent cases that were a waste of time. I could literally watch the first 8 or 10 episodes, skip the rest and jump straight to episode 22. It will still feel like I didn't miss a single episode. And this is because the cases were not linked. They didn't even have moments where they will say, you know, in the last case, Xinfu bought the same necklace for Xinfei as a gift at the Lantern Festival. No, they didn't have those moments. And those moments remind you as a viewer that you are watching the same drama. And also those characters remember that they previously solved such cases. But no, they solve cases and then they act as if they never happened. You would even think that Will Smith used that memory clearing gadget on them. You know, that one from Men in Black. So they probably erased their memories after every case because that's how it looks like. Despite having cases that barely connect or link to each other, the cases were almost solved the same way with less challenges. You already know that Li Pei is going to test things on herself, get herself hurt or sick just to solve the case, which is something you will not expect from someone who wants to avenge her family. Why would you risk your life before you avenge your family for cases that are not even linked to the case of your family? It doesn't make sense. Then you will have Xiao Huajing, who will also be calculating the stars and the moon, telling you the height and weight of the criminal by just looking at the footprint. That's how almost every case was like. You could barely feel the suspense or the mystery in those cases. On top of that, some of the cases didn't really make sense. Let's just be honest. About 2 or 3 cases made sense. The rest were just filler cases to bring Xiao Huajing and Li Pei close. The only case that I will say was good, it was the second case. That was the only time I actually anticipated the next episode and I couldn't predict what would happen next. I was very invested in that case. As for the case of Li Pei's father and her family, they could have done a good build-up for that case. I was highly anticipating that case, but when they started touching that case, I was drained. I had less interest in that case because they didn't have something big for us to look forward to. The moment they started showing the mastermind, I didn't even care why he did what he did because he was never mentioned in the drama until episode 25 or 26 if I'm not mistaken. He just popped out of nowhere and suddenly he's being all mysterious and scheming behind the brown curtain. There was no build-up for that character. Even if you want to hate him, you don't have a reason to hate him besides him being the mastermind behind Li Pei's family's massacre. That's the only thing you can say. I hate him for that. I don't think we have seen him doing anything wrong on screen. The only wrong thing he did was only related to Li Pei's family and also Li Pei. So this guy seemed to have a problem with anyone who comes from Li Pei's family. And I don't know what happened between him and Li Pei's father that led to the tragic ending of Li Pei's family. They never touched on that part. There's no history on how Li Pei's father interacted with everyone in court or anywhere else. We just know about how he was framed, but we don't know about the motive behind it. I don't think they mentioned anything about the motive behind Li Pei's father being framed or the benefits that the mastermind got. They never touched on those topics. So for me, the story didn't even make sense. The whole thing will make sense because I'm left with more questions than answers. The mastermind was busy expressing his loyalty to the emperor and he said he never intended to rebel, but Li Pei set him up, which is true. But then we forget that he is the villain. So now you have to sympathize with him because you never saw him do any wrong thing. And you can tell from his action, he never intended to rebel. He never intended to get in power or overthrow the emperor. He was only focused on Li Pei. Other than that, there was nothing that you could say he did that will show that he intended to rebel, he intended to get more power or something like that. He just didn't behave like how villains usually behave, which somehow leads me to this question. What if he did what he did 15 years ago just to stop Li Pei's father from plotting something, and the emperor somehow knew about it, but he kept it from Li Pei? To be honest, the story was weak, and what's worse is the emperor's part in the cases. But before I start complaining about the emperor, let me say something first. The emperor has seen a lot, okay? On episode 1, 4, and 14, things were hectic for the emperor. So someone should probably get the emperor a therapist or something. Maybe that's why he is the way he is. He's one of the weakest emperors I've seen in C-dramas. He barely made any huge decisions in the drama, and also judging from the cases Li Pei solved, he was doing nothing. Most of the incidents in the palace could have been avoided if he was attentive. I wasn't really mad at him until the case of Li Pei's family. The way he handled the entire situation wasn't how an emperor is supposed to deal with the situation. So you have someone who murders a prince, and he also tries to fool the emperor, but then he gets a lighter punishment, which doesn't make much sense because first things first, if you murder a prince or a royal, it is a huge crime. Secondly, if you try to fool the emperor, it is also a crime that can lead to execution. I guess the entire point of this drama is to show that the royals are untouchable despite their wrongdoings. Anyways, let's talk about Xiao Huajing. Xiao Huajing is played by Wang Xingyue, and I feel like Wang Xingyue is playing the same character he played in the double. Just that in this drama he doesn't know martial arts, so he's basically the brains in the drama. But the character is still the same, so I like him and I like how he's always chilled and can easily inspect the crime scenes. He barely misses any detail. But I think they made him too smart to a point where you even ask yourself, how did Li Pei solve cases before Xiao Huajing joined her? But on the other side, I guess they made him the brains of every case just to create a balance between him and Li Pei, since Pei knows martial arts, medicine, and she is also a spoiled princess. Another thing I seriously want to complain about is how characters pop out of nowhere. So we had a prince who suddenly got involved in a case. He had his own group of ministers, but we never knew about his existence. Then we had the crown prince who also popped out of nowhere. He was also involved in another case, acting all mysterious. Why act all mysterious? We never knew about you. We don't know you. No one mentioned you. This is the first time we see you, so why act all mysterious and only to last for 3 episodes, and after that no one mentions you? What's the point? There's no reason why he's involved in that case, or why is he even plotting. There's no clear reason. You just find a crown prince involved in a case and he's busy plotting, but you don't know why. You just have to guess by yourself. Hey, I'm not kidding you, that story didn't make any sense at all. If I could say one good thing about the drama, I will talk about the first and last 2 cases. I already mentioned that the first 2 cases raised my expectations because they were too good. As for the last 2 cases, I complained a lot about them, and I still stand on what I said. But they were not that bad compared to other cases. But at the end of the day, I have to appreciate the actors and the entire crew for giving it their best. It's not their fault that the script was very bad. So this is just coming from me, and I don't see myself rewatching this drama again. Unless if I want to sleep, I can watch it so that I can go to sleep as early as possible.